Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of the program. I am Imonia Marere. There are so many issues to be dealt with in Nigeria today, but today we're focusing on the just concluded by-elections in Nigeria. The elections were conducted in 12 states of the Federation across two senatorial districts and, of course, 5 federal constituencies and 9 state constituencies. The exercise offered yet another window into the strengths and weaknesses of the country's electoral system. Though conducted on a smaller scale than general elections, these contests remain vital indicators of democratic consolidation, institutional capacity, and citizens' trust in governance. From the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to political parties, security agencies, civil society organizations, the media, and of course the electorate, every stakeholder had a role to play and lessons to learn. Issues around voter turnout, logistics, the use of technology, security management, intra-party democracy, and the conduct of political actors have all come under scrutiny. The exercise also raised broader questions about how well Nigeria is learning from past elections and whether incremental reforms are translating into real progress. On the program today, we shall look back and project forward. What do the by-elections signpost for the November 8 Anambra governorship election, the February 21, 2026 FCT Area Council elections, the 2026 Osun and Ekiti governorship elections, and the 2027 general elections? These are the issues we'll be tackling on the program today. And I'm joined in the studio by the national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Mr. Sylvester Eze Okenwa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Also with us in the studio is Mr. Mike Mbanefo. Mr. Mbanefo is a lawyer and a member of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Anambra State. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're also joined by Mr. Jude Imagwe. Mr. Jude Imagwe is a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party in Edo State. Jude, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, we'll dive straight into our discussion.
Issues are critical, germane to Nigeria's democratic process.
Politicians can only be seen maybe on television by judges. They should not intermingle, because once you intermingle, then you destroy the systems.
When the personalities are big, important to national discourse.
When you reach certain stage in power and you demonstrate arrogance to the extreme, there's no other thing that will happen to you other than to fall.
When the developments are seemingly complex, confounding like a 1,000-piece jigsaw, that's when we require bold, sound, and analytical minds to help put the pieces together. Jigsaw with Benga Arileba, now showing Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. on AIT. Jigsaw, demystifying the issues.
Thank you so much for staying with us on People, Politics, and Power. And we are taking a reflective look at the August 16 by-elections in Nigeria, because it was held in various states, about 12 or 13 states across the country, 2 senatorial districts, and of course 5 federal constituencies and 9 state constituencies. Since then, there's been a lot of talk about how the elections went down. Let's begin with you, National Chairman of APGA.
Yes.
How would you describe the by-elections that took place in August? Did INEC demonstrate improved capacity? Did the electorate demonstrate enthusiasm? And of course, did technology deployment meet the expectations of a party like yours?
Yeah. For me, I'm one person that has never hidden my commendations for the Independent National Electoral Commission under Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. And I say this for a purpose. If you cast your mind back to how elections were, say, a decade or 2 decades ago, you will know that on INEC under Professor Mahmoud Yakubu has recorded tremendous improvement, especially if you put into consideration the deployment of technology by INEC. And then when you talk about deployment of technology, making particular reference to the BVAS machines that has tried as much as possible to ensure some measure of credibility with the accreditation system. And then the enactment of the Electoral Act 2022 has equally, which has or contains some far-reaching provisions in ensuring the credibility of the electoral process, which is the hallmark of any democracy anywhere in the world. And so I have not hidden my admiration. I say this. Of course, if you look at 2023 election, if you cast your mind back to 2023 election and then you realize some issues that were raised, particularly with the transmission of results to the IREF, you know, I think that was what generated much of the furor in 2023. And then, coming straight to the by-elections, I can tell you that INEC performed creditably and excellently. I think I must use that word, excellently. But the case has not always been with one-off elections, because INEC over the years has demonstrated immense capacity in conduct of off-cycle elections. So the problem hasn't never been off-cycle elections. And I say this because I've been a player, at least for the past, say, 12 years or so. Anambra State, for one, has off-cycle elections starting from 2010, that Peter Obi ran for his second term in APGA. 2013, that brought in Chief Willie Obiano. 2017, when Chief Willie Obiano ran for his second term in office. 2021, that brought in Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo. And now 2025. And so, if you juxtapose, the issues with INEC has never been with the off-cycle elections, where you just manage just few constituencies or few electoral wards. The problem is, how can INEC upscale such improvements in a general election? That's where the problem is. And so for me, the election of August 16 remained, for me, what I may call a near perfect yardstick. That if INEC can actually upscale such improvement in future elections, because in those elections, in Anambra, for example, the BVAS machine worked in almost all the polling units in the state. In almost all the polling units, there were just little or no issues. And even places where there were issues, the RA techs were on hand to address those issues. Of course, as at, say, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., because I was the constituency collation agent for that election in Anambra South. As at 8, 9 p.m., about 97% of the results were already in the IREF. About 97% of the results for Anambra South. I think out of 1,931 at the time I checked, it was 1,899. So meaning that only 35 polling unit results were yet to be uploaded. And so the problem, like I said, has never been with INEC conducting off-cycle elections. And like I said, I'm probably one of those that have commended INEC, especially in terms of the improvement they've done to the electoral system, particularly with the deployment of technology. And I still maintain that commendation till tomorrow.
Chairman, is that commendation coming from the fact that your party did so well in this offset?
That's the question that I will always ask. Incidentally, I'm a lawyer. I'm not just a lawyer. I have particular interest in election and election-related cases. And so most times, when there are criticism of the commission, most times people criticize from the angle of ignorance. I say this, from the angle of ignorance. You must understand the nitty-gritty of our electoral laws and the regulations that INEC has put in place before you offer proper commendation or condemnation, as the case may be. And so, like most people will ask, is it because your party did well? No, not necessarily because our party did well, but because INEC were able to follow the stipulations that they made.
Okay.
Because once you comply, you remember if you go to an election petition tribunal, what the tribunal will ask you is, was the election conducted in substantial compliance? So the watchword is substantial compliance, not a perfect compliance. You can't have a perfect election anywhere in the world. Even in America, people were still raising issues about the election that brought Trump to office. So the issue is, has INEC substantially complied either with the electoral laws, the Electoral Act, other relevant laws affecting the conduct of the election, or regulations that they made? For example, in 2023, much of the issues people had with the failure of INEC to transmit results to the IREF, especially with the issue of glitch, was because INEC gave their assurances and they stipulated those in their guidelines. And to that extent, people were right to a reasonable extent to say, look, you made so and so stipulations, you prepare so and so guidelines. And the simple thing would have been for you to simply follow through with your guidelines.
And give assurances
Exactly.
that all will go well.
So for these elections, I do not see anywhere anybody has been able to reasonably impugn or impeach the credibility of INEC with respect to the conduct of the election.
Okay.
And the watchword, like I said, is reasonably.
Okay.
Not just to make bogus allegations.
Mr. Ambadenfo, your party, the APC, across the 12 or 13 states where the elections held, also did very well in this election. But in comparison to other off-season elections, how would you describe this one?
Well, I will make specific reference to the just concluded Anambra election, to the effect that of course, what is on ground, what we saw on ground was exactly what it is. And what it is that ABGA swept up all the all the polls with regards to both Senate and
state constituency elections. I think there was also one federal constituency.
No, it was actually a state constituency.
It was a state constituency. And when you broaden it to other states where APC did very well, it tells you exactly what had happened and what happened in Anambra. I want to create a balance to the effect that all states where APC did well, where people had integrity, where people had patriotism for their party, where people did not compromise the party. But when you want to put that side by side with Anambra election, I mean, it's clear. Yes, ABGA has incumbency to their advantage. They had opposition, what do they call, fragmentation to their advantage. They had the rural versus urban challenge to their advantage. And of course, the power of incumbency. But when you have the federal machinery, as people always allege, that, oh, because the ruling party and the will come with their federal might to kill the people in the Anambra state, it creates a balance. The only thing that makes you lose victory is when you lose focus. I give you a stance. I was in this studio when I mentioned that I do not think and I do not believe that there's anybody who can challenge the incumbent governor, except late Senator Ifeanyi Ubah, who had the sagacity, the might, and everything. It could have been a very serious challenge. But since for some of us who had him as a flag bearer to stand in for APC for this election, lost him. As immediately we lost him, we know we've lost the election. Because there's a difference between somebody being physically hungry and spiritually hungry. People who are spiritually hungry, no matter what you do for them, they will go and compromise you. That's just a simple thing. We didn't lose the election because we don't have the capacity. We lost the election because the people who were the stakeholders there compromised the party. That is just what it is. If you are sharing food and you give a hungry person the charge over people to serve them food, you see the person with a lot of food flags by the side. But if you give somebody who has the capacity, who is able to feed himself, who knows what it takes, that there's a difference between a sauce bowl of porridge and that was cooked in the restaurant, they will not compromise. But because these characters, these political gladiators who call themselves party members, they are all interested in, what they are interested in is fragmentation of their pocket.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, so, Comrade Jude, let me come to you. You are a member of the PDP. Your party also ran in this election across the country, but particularly so in Edo State. But it didn't do so well. But let's look at the organization of or the conduct of the elections, all the issues that are always at play, voter apathy, violence, thuggery, what have you. And then, of course, we look at the logistics arrangement and the issue of technology. What would be or what was your assessment of that by-election?
I think, thank you for the opportunity. I think I will be in a very clear position to analyze what the circumstances is as regards when it has to do with off-cycle election, because I'm a victim of that circumstance too. I had contested an off-cycle election for the Esako Federal constituency when the immediate past Deputy Governor, Comrade Philip Shaibu, left the House of Rep for Edo State Office of Deputy Governor. So I ran for the by-election. So I know what it is and I know the challenges that are tied to it. It is totally different from how my brother has actually painted it. I would say first, at the first instance, that I look at off-cycle election almost like how local government elections are conducted in states. Because 99% of the incumbents in states take charges of how their off-cycle elections are conducted. But that, again, does not give an explanation for what a general election will look like. That is one. On the second leg of it is the fact that I had also felt that outside, with the exception of Anambra and Oyo, every other state that they had off-cycle election, the governors are first-timers. So it therefore means it is the first election that is given to them after the election that they have emerged as governors and deputy. So you do not expect them to fold their hands and go to sleep. That is why I said I'm a victim of that circumstance. So the governor says that I had just finished an election, and there's another election that is coming just after my election. The result of the election tells my popularity. The result of the election suggests my performance. The result of the election tells the party to which I belong to that I am in charge. And so they do every and anything to ensure that the candidate of the incumbent of that state emerges, with only exceptional cases. So some cases you see where the incumbent is of, like an example of Abga in Anambra State, is an incumbent in Anambra, but the government at the center is APC. So, but do you think that there is no relationship? There is relationship. If you say they should go for an election all out and the federal want to do what they want to do, they will still do it. But there's always an understanding in politics. That understanding in politics is that cannot be broken. But let's leave that for the conduct of itself proper. The conduct of itself proper. My brother, I disagree totally with you that INEC had done exceptionally well in off-cycle elections. I do not think that. You see, when you talk about policies and you talk about transformation, I feel strongly when window of off-cycle election comes up, it should be a reflection of INEC's true vision of what the next general election should look like. It therefore means every challenges that have been associated with the previous general election should be perfected in the off-cycle election, ranging from technical glitches that we had in 2023 to electronic transmission of results. If INEC is honest to themselves and they are totally independent in the manner at which the organization is tagged, I do not see what suggests and makes it very difficult for an off-cycle election that do not carry over 30 constituencies that will not test run the electronic transmission of results. I do not see anything that suggests it wrong.
Let's be clear about that. At this point in time, does the law actually support electronic transmission?
I'm going to that stage.
Yes.
I'm going to that stage. Now, that's why I'm saying I'm taking it one after the other. Now, if the case is like it was given in 2023, it therefore means INEC are also victim of circumstance. Victim of circumstance in the sense that they work within the ambits of the law and between the suggestion of what the Electoral Act has given to them. It therefore means again that what are we doing to address the issues that surrounds 2023? I do not think that election conduct from the off-cycle is our problem, voters apathy is our problem. The first thing that will give an integrity to any election going forward is a honest electoral reform. That honest electoral reform that defines the role of INEC, defines the extent to which each application that is being used by INEC is put into practice. Ranging from, if you say I can vote electronically, it therefore means my result can be transmitted electronically. If that is justified by an act that suggests that this is what becomes the final law of the land, that is when we begin to talk about an election that will be moving towards close to perfection. There's no election in the world that is perfect. But the resemblance of a perfect election is an election that the citizens are enthusiastic of coming out to participate. The citizens know that their vote will count. Even if it will not count 100%, let 99% count. The citizens have assurance that if you say that election starts at 10 o'clock, and in all sense of honesty, election will start at 10, it takes us to logistics. I've voted in the US and I've voted in the United Kingdom. I still do not understand why our elections cannot be decentralized. I still do not understand why, with the huge amount of money that is allocated to INEC for electoral process, we cannot have a process where, in the UK, I voted in the gym. So you can vote at any place. I do not have to travel from Abuja to my local community because election is local to go and vote. We have gone into digital world.
Jude, you talked about decentralization, but earlier on you also mentioned the fact that the off-cycle elections are just like local government elections.
We cannot pretend about it.
And we know what local government elections
have
been like in Nigeria. So if we decentralize and put the responsibility of conducting such major elections in the hands of, say, states.
No, when I say decentralization, I do not know. So we don't. Why do we think that we cannot trust ourselves?
Do we?
We should. See, the problem is we assume that we cannot trust ourselves. We can't, without making the effort to trust each other. It's a perception that we have just built that I cannot trust the governors. And the governors begin to act in that manner that I'm not trusted, so I should not do anything that to be trusted. If we tell ourselves that we can't, these places that these things work, they are humans, that they are not aliens. The places these things work are humans that participate in this process. They are not aliens. So we only need to come out from yesterday to today to tell ourselves that we can trust ourselves.
National Chairman, beyond the clamor for electoral reforms, let's look at what actually happened in these by-elections.
Yes.
Did you notice any gaps, substantial gaps, that needs to be plugged, both on the part of the Electoral Commission, political parties, the electorate, and of course security agencies?
In answering your question, I will try as much as possible and make reference to some of the points made by my brother here, Mr. Jude. And like I said earlier on, part of the problem we have with our electoral process is largely that of ignorance. That's part of the problem. Ignorance in terms of how much do people understand the laws that are applicable? Because whenever I talk, I always talk from the standpoint of being a lawyer. And I am concerned not with an ideal. Yes, we all yearn for that ideal. But anything we discuss about an electoral system or an electoral process must be within the context of the applicable laws. Let me give you one of the instances, and then that's part of the confusion that has come to attend to our electoral system, especially from the fallout of the 2023 election. And one of that confusion is the meaning of the terminology transmission of results. It's very important. So you understand where to blame the commission and where to blame the applicable laws. Now, what do we mean by transmission of result? Or is there a difference between transmission of result to a portal like the IREF and what we'll call electronic collation of results? What the Electoral Act provides for, as well as the INEC guideline, is electronic transmission of results, not electronic collation. And to that extent, I'm one of those that came out forcefully and argued that beyond INEC coming to say that we actually had a glitch in 2023, there are other ways and manner that you can use to know whether the election was actually credible, especially with the collation. What do we mean by transmission of result? INEC has provided, under the relevant laws and the guideline, that at the end of an election in a polling unit, that the presiding officer or any other poll official in that place, who is in charge of the beavers, uses the machine to scan the result and sends to what we call an INEC result viewing portal. So you stay in the comfort of your house, log on to that portal, and you see the result displayed for your polling unit or actually any other polling unit. In essence, a man in UK or in US can sit in the comfort of his house and log on to that portal and see the results as they come in real time. The next question is, that result at the IREV, of what purpose does it serve? Is it the result that INEC uses in the collation process? The answer is no. And that's where the confusion comes in. So some persons felt because INEC failed to transmit result to that IREV, they could not do proper collation. No. At the end of the election, there is a physical copy of the result. It is that physical copy that the presiding officer, along with other poll officials, go to the collation center. It is that result that is collated, not the result in the IREV. So the result in the IREV is simply there for purposes of transparency, if I may use that word, in terms of the fact that you can sit in the comfort of your house while INEC stays in their situation room and looks at all this community of results as they come in real time. But still, the fact must be made that it is not that result that is collated. The result that is collated is the physical copy. Now, when INEC introduced that, I can tell you I was one of those that challenged the IREV because of, well, I can't say my fair understanding of the electoral process. And why did I make that challenge? I'll paint a scenario for you. There's an election in your polling unit. At the end of the election, the result is uploaded to the IREV. And so you're sitting in your house looking at your polling unit result. Now, at the point of collation, remember, INEC introduced another set of staff called the CSRVS, which is the Collation Support and Result Verification System. Now, the CSRVS looks at the result, looks at the beavers machine, and probably finds that there has been overvoting, either by virtue of the fact that at the end of the day, the number of accredited voters as captured on the machine is slightly lower than the outcome of the poll as reflected on the result. What is INEC expected to do? The answer is very simple. The collation officer at that point is not expected to collect that result because there has been overvoting. That is INEC guideline, not my guideline. Meanwhile, that same result is already sitting at the IREV. And so I was one of those that said that the point when results should be transmitted to the IREV should be at the point when it has passed the threshold of collation. Until that result passes through the threshold of collation, its credibility cannot be ascertained.
It would have been certified at the collation
exactly
stage.
the point. Exactly the point. So before you said, I'm telling you, this is my opinion. I'm not saying that is what INEC said. At the area of, I think it was one of the stakeholders.
Painted in there is like that you work with INEC. And
No. Not that I work with INEC. Let me explain. Before INEC made these introductions, there were stakeholders engagement. And I say this, I'm one lawyer. My area of interest is election and election-related cases. And so when we try to analyze these things, we benchmark even previous electoral laws. So when INEC did that introduction, I said, oh, fine. But then there is a problem, and this is a real-life problem. Remember, if you read the INEC guideline, it tells you the day-to-day or time process that INEC officials at the polling unit must follow. From the beginning of the election down to the end of the counting of votes, sorting of votes and everything, and then recording in the result sheet. Remember again, we have some, okay, I'm going to tell you an issue that I had in my polling unit in 2023, and I was able to solve it. Because at times, you equally look at the issue of even the poll officials. Most of these coppers that INEC use as presiding officers, most times, what training do they go through? Now, at that election, there were about 30 votes that had been cast. In my polling unit, 30 votes. I came in, looked at, when it was my turn, so the lady brought up the machine, keyed in my VIN number on the beavers machine. My details came up. Immediately she saw my details. She gave me the ballot paper. I said, wait a minute. Is this what you have been doing all the while? He said, yes. I said, no, you've not done the accreditation. I looked at the machine, lo and behold, the accreditation details there was reading 0. Meanwhile, 30 persons had voted. About 30 persons had voted. So, for that particular presiding officer, she didn't even understand what was expected of her as a presiding officer. She didn't even understand the purpose of the machine that she had, which is the Beavers machine. And these are real life issues. I don't discuss issues that are idealistic in nature. I discuss real life issues that are attendant on days of elections. The next one is you talked about is the issue of logistics. And you must agree with me that INEC has done a whole lot in improving the logistics threshold. I understand what he said about issue of, we having a system where, you have thorough review, thorough analysis, thorough laws that take care of so many things, including accreditation and voting, in such a way that so many issues have been brought up in the past, including diaspora voting, where you can actually sit in the comfort of your house and vote. Fine. But remember, INEC can only operate within the context of the laws. In 2006 and 2010 Electoral Act, it was expressly stated in the Electoral Act then that electronic voting is forbidden or prohibited. And so you can't talk about electronic voting when the Electoral Act expressly makes that provision illegal. So why we yearn for that perfect electoral system, let us not forget that INEC operates within the context of laws and guidelines, and those guidelines are made pursuant to the Electoral Act. And now back to the logistics I talked about. Previously, if you go to INEC headquarters or CBN, you receive materials on the day of election. From there, sensitive materials, I mean. Because non-sensitive, of course, they have all distributed before, of course. Yeah. Now, on the day of election, and the morning of election, say 5, 6 a.m., everybody gathers at the local government. And remember, there are local government where the distance from the local government to one of the wards may be as much as 5 hours. And so you start moving materials from the local government to those hinterlands. But now, what has INEC done? INEC, I think it was before 2023 or 2019, created what they call the super racks and the rack centers. So this has helped with easing the issue of logistics, especially with distribution of materials on election day. There are equally other issues that at times, you train presiding officers, especially bringing into consideration the issue with insecurity in the country. You have presiding officers that you have trained. In the morning of the election, they are nowhere to be found. What I'm telling you are real life issues because I have been a major player in elections. So I tell you real life issues.
There are also situations where you have hired, INEC has hired drivers.
Exactly.
Vehicles.
Exactly.
And on election day,
so these are the issues we must continue to talk about. Issues.
Okay.
In 1979, again, and this is the final point I will make, which is the issue of trust. I think it was the governor of Anambra State that was sharing that experience. He said as a student, he worked as a presiding officer in the 1970s. That's the election that ushered in President Shagari. In 1979, that they went to their various wards and they collected the materials for the. He was a presiding officer in one of the wards, in one of the polling units in his local government. He collected materials for the election
and
took them home.
Yeah.
So you dare not do that now. So there are so many
issues of trust.
Exactly. There's still the issue of trust. So when you talk about an election, that's why I said, if you count from 1999 till date, this is for me, one of the golden periods or golden eras for the commission. And I call it one of the golden eras because of how INEC has been able to leverage technology in solving the myriads of problems that have, used to attend the conduct of election. I'm not saying that we've attained that perfect electoral system. But anybody who is sincere, in 2003, most people were in their polling units waiting to vote while results were being announced.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Mbanefo at this point in time. This particular by-election, it was such a small election. We are going to be faced in 2026 with a statewide election. In fact, in November, on November 8th, a statewide election in Anambra, statewide election in Osun and Ekiti states in 2025, and of course, the area council elections in the FCT at that time. These are much bigger elections than the 16 constituencies that had by-elections this time around. What are you looking forward to? What do you think should be done by the Electoral Commission, by the political parties? Because the whole question of political education comes up. Both of them have spoken eloquently about that political parties are just not carrying out their functions on political education. They are not educating their followers and their and voters on what to do even on election day, what to expect and what to do on election day.
First of all, quickly, I will address a little issue with regards to the observances and the performance of INEC. You cannot hold brief for INEC. They are to speak for themselves. I'm sure if INEC was here, they will tell you they are doing their best, which obviously they are doing their best because everybody does well in his own field of endeavor. The infrastructure within the country, has it gone beyond what it used to be and what it is and what it ought to be? The answer is no. That INEC was able to come into Anambra to do, he mentioned that when he was verifying his identity, so that to enable him vote, the lady punched and found his name, but zero
accreditation.
Accreditation.
That was in 2023.
Now, the question is, what is the meaning of BVAS? Biometric Verification System. It ends there. It's not for accreditation. It's to verify that the person standing before me is the person. Now, let's leave it. If you say, sorry sir, if you say that, what do we think of the forthcoming off-season election, which is why we are here, and not for INEC, I will tell you that there's nothing different that will happen, that has happened, that can happen. It will be what you just saw. Without sounding immodest or holding brief for ABGA, the election has come. He mentioned rightly that there's no way a first-timer, as a sitting governor, in an election observance, will sit down, fold his hands, and watch you come and discredit him by snatching his votes. Come and tell him he's unpopular. Come and tell him the people does not trust him. Come and tell him he doesn't have grassroots. It likens itself to one historical saying that they talked about apostasy. He said that to make war upon a king who is an apostate, who has not abandoned the religion of Islam, that to take his government away from him is obligatory by arson. Soludo, coincidentally, by the election that has just happened, showcased that he is on the ground. He is rooted to the ground. And again, the choice of candidates matter. If you take a cripple in Osun State, he will not win 4x400 meters relay race. If you take a sprinter in Osun State, he will run even faster than INEC. So if you, first, the choice of candidate is very important. You don't expect to carry a professor, a doctor, or even an educated person and begin to just oppose him with people whose identity and credentials is questionable. But if you go to son of Queen Elizabeth, they will say, this one is Queen, you will go and speak Queen's English. But now, in the context of what is expected in the next election, for me, I sadly hold my chest to say, we have become unfortunate. The cola is in the hand of he who presented it already. Anambra people are very resilient people, but they are too quick to give up, especially when they see the first sample. I mean, look at the gap between the victory. How do you explain that? Somebody who has complete leg has run a race. Then you say, no, you want to challenge the person with somebody who is having epilepsy.
I can help you with the explanation.
You understand? So with that, what it is with INEC, what it has always been, and what is expected and what will continue to be expected, because you cannot place INEC's performance on beavers or improvement on beavers. The question is the infrastructure upon which the beavers act and rest on. Have they been improved? The answer is no.
Okay. One other aspect I need you to address very quickly,
Yes.
as we are beginning to round off our discussion, before I go to Jude, is the issue of voter intimidation, vote buying, and thuggery. This happened in several places. Maybe not in Anambra, but in several places. We saw videos circulating from a place like Kano State where votes were being bought openly. And this happened in several other constituencies across the country. How do we nip that in the bud before the next off-cycle elections?
You see, when somebody is already mentally enslaved and has not emancipated from mental slavery, there's no amount of preaching you give to the person not to do what he wishes to do. What is democracy? Government of the people, for the people, by the people. The people says, give me. Government gave them. I understand. And by the people, they said, go ahead. Complacency has nothing to do with redundancy. That somebody is redundant may have reasons why. That somebody is complacent that you know you ought to do and you have everything it takes for you to do and you refuse to do. The people are hungry, unfortunately. Hunger, whether you like it or not, plays a major role in what happens or what the election turn out.
Okay.
I don't know if I can just somehow say a thing or two with respect to the last question
Very
that
quickly,
you asked.
sir.
Yes, very quickly. And it goes to buttress one point. If you follow the trajectory of the conduct of elections in Nigeria, you will see that elections keep evolving. And I will tell you this, incidentally, I am a politician, and it's one sad appellation that I've never ever expected or believed that I will give myself. But it is what it is. By virtue of the fact that I'm the national chairman of a political party, I'm a politician today. And what is that point? The point is that politicians will always find a way to evolve and try to outsmart the system. And that speaks to what my brother Jude said earlier on. And in commending him, I will also say that part of the issues or part of the problem we have in the country is that we are not building strong institutions. Strong institutions are what you need to take care of any problem, not strong individuals, rather strong institutions, institutions that are foolproof. And why do I say this? What he said about, what the issue you raised about vote buying goes to show one thing. It goes to show the improvement that INEC has brought to the electoral system. Why do I say that vote buying goes to show that improvement? Previously, politicians, and I will use 2003 election and 2007 election, for example. You know why you didn't have the issue of vote buying? Because this electoral system was not it was far from being credible. So
now, in place of vote buying, there was ballot box snatching.
Not even snatching. There was exactly
that
replaced vote buying. That's the point I needed to make.
Exists
so
and
then, in
continues to
2003
exist.
and 2007,
Exactly.
what the issue was simply that you would be queuing up in your polling unit. You won't see polling unit results. Results were being manufactured or written somewhere. So the politician didn't need to come to the people, the electorate, to share money. He needed to settle INEC officials. And as simple as that, and results will be declared, and then they will ask you to proceed to court. But now, because of innovation, because INEC has now decided to leverage on technology, and because listen, in 2023,
Technology without infrastructure.
no, I'm going to say this. You know why the result you found so many upsets? Most people are being uncharitable to INEC. We had serving governors. We had serving governors lose the election. Not one, not two, not three,
Sorry,
not four.
Can I just come in?
For the
please?
first time in the history of this country.
Can I say something?
Okay, you can.
Yes.
You see, when you you quoted the narration of vote buying as if it just started. There had been vote buying from our inception of democracy.
Till date.
To date, the only thing is the methodology. The methods have changed. That you see it now does not mean it has not happened yesterday.
In fact, it was
it
inserted
has been
into loaves of bread in the past.
See, they have devised every means. I was thinking that when you say that politicians, the truth is, politicians always think outside the laws and think of every ways to cut corners. It's just like a child that wants to go and write exam that is not prepared for an exam. He sits and thinks of every other thing unconventionally to pass the exam. That is the same way politicians. And so that is why people, see, when we talk about solving a problem, you don't treat malaria still living in the same environment the way it is. If you buy mosquito net and you cover yourself, you still walk out of that mosquito net at night. During the day, you go out to have your bath. You don't wrap yourself with mosquito net when you are moving. So what is the problem we need to treat in treating malaria? It's the environment. When we deal with the environment, we will not have no reason to be having malaria. If we say there are problems in INEC, like that is why I asked whether he's a staffer of INEC. Because I'm expecting him to have been the national chairman of AMCA. You should not only have been speaking to
Well,
us.
national chairman,
I know you very well. I know you very well. So sorry. You see, sir, in 2015, we had the smart card
reader, yes,
that threw us out of government. It was, see, that is why I still say, what we need is people that have the courage to allow a system work that will truly reflect the yearning of the people. In 2022, we came with the beavers that gave birth to IRF.
Absolutely.
So what I am thinking, like what I'm saying, see, I said INEC, they are victim of circumstance, and whether they like it or not, they will continue to be victim until the day they too come out clearly to tell the citizens what they are going through. You cannot be suffering in silence and people still come back and throw everything at your doorstep.
Which comes back to what Mike said about infrastructure.
I'm going there. Yes. I'm going there now. You see, what I expect a system to do is progression. It's just like academics, it's progression. A child in 100 level should not behave like a child in final year. But a child in 100 level and a child in 200 level accommodates what he has been taught in year 1 and year 2 and become a better student in year 3. And so if INEC haven't sat after 2023 general election up until 2025, I am expecting that INEC should have now sat and said, what were the problems that came up in 2023? What is the comparison between the smart card results of 2015 and the outcome of the beavers in 2023? Can we put this thing together and think like what he said, something different? Now, if he's thinking of something different, it takes us back to 3 people. The first set of people is the members we have in the National Assembly.
As simple as that.
What are they thinking about an election that will be people-centric? The second is the man that pilots the affairs of INEC. What are the legacy he intends to leave behind as his own contribution to electoral reforms? Then the third is the political parties.
Exactly.
The political parties, ranging from the processes of the conduct of primaries up until the candidate that emerges from a political party, that is the crisis that INEC inherits. INEC do not tell you who your political party's candidate should be. It is you that go to the process to conduct your primaries. You conduct the primaries in a manner that is not in conformity with the Electoral Act. INEC has no duty than to conduct an election, general election, and they do that. The political parties should not sit down and think that it is the duty of INEC to go to market and tell them that tomorrow is voters registration. Oh, don't go and buy a card. Don't go. See, political parties have actually, in the true sense of political party, lost ideology. They just go, they see it as a vehicle, and that is why you see sometimes in some states, after a party served for 16 years, they will tell you that the party secretariat in the state is not owned by the political party. I was served for 16 years in a state. They will tell you that the party secretariat in the state is not owned by the political party. So immediately the party runs out of power in the state, the party can no longer pay for secretariat. The man that pays for the secretariat now becomes the owner of the party. So these are systemic problems. So it means the reform has to be holistic. We have to deal with electoral offenses. It must be enshrined in electoral reform. Electoral offenses. INEC should not be going into, you cannot sue INEC as a court to say you are taking INEC alongside. No. If anybody goes to an election and has a problem with election, INEC should defend the election they conducted and not to be adjoined with the person that had won an election.
All right, thank you so much.
I don't know.
Yes.
Just very shortly.
10 seconds,
then,
if you can.
That's
Please, please.
As much as possible, I quite agree with Jude. But then it boils down to one thing. And I said it from beginning. It is our laws.
Okay.
In
so
fact,
we need reforms. We need reforms.
Especially we respect our electoral laws.
Okay.
Much of the stipulation, because like I said earlier on, INEC hands are tied. Whatever INEC is doing must be in conformity with the relevant laws.
Let them tell us that their hands
No,
are
INEC
tight.
has been
And they
saying
shout.
that.
Sorry.
You cannot say your hands are tight and you are conducting the process. Your hands
We have
are
to
tight
leave it
and-
at that. Our time is up. We must go. Thank you so much. Mr. Sylvester Eze-Okenwa is the
Thank you.
national chairman of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA. Thank you so much for your time.
for having me.
Mr. Jude Imagwe is a chieftain of the PDP in Edo State. Thank you so much for your time.
for having
me.
And
Nigeria
of
by
course,
extension.
Mr. Mike Mbanefo is a lawyer and APC chieftain in Anambra State. Thank you so much. for
Thank
your
you very
time.
much.
Right.
Thank you.
That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Until then, do have yourself a wonderful week ahead. Bye for now.